Hey Masters of Speed, it's Terra Master, and welcome to the Speed Duel GX Box Banlist tier list. Now this format is pretty much over at the time of recording because the Midterm Box is officially legal at Konami events as of like 3 days from recording this. But I figure that someone should do a tier list of this format, if for no other reason than for like historical documentation. Sort of, hey look, someone had an idea of what it was, even though it's very unsolved. But yeah, so let's get into that discussion here. This was a very unsolved format, especially after Errata's. Didn't really actually get enough time, I think, for everyone to kind of figure out what was really the best decks and what rogue decks had potential, what decks could still be optimized, all those kind of things. But unfortunately the format is over, so at this point we may never know unless we decide to revisit this format for some reason. But that's probably another discussion for another video. So let's just get into tiering these things. Alright. So first, you see, we have tier 0 up here, but I'm going to tell you right now, let's destroy any mystery because there's no moth in this format here that I'm going to consider worthy of discussion. There is nothing in tier 0 because that's what the Banlist did. Woo! We did it. Anyway, moving on to decks that actually are available to play in the Banlist format. We have Armed Dragon Ojamas, otherwise known as Oja Armed Dragon. Ojama Armed Dragon. And we're going to put this right in tier 2. This is, I think, the best aggressive deck of the format. It is extremely good at doing what it does, which is OTK, kill your opponent very quickly in one turn, as the name OTK implies. And that's why it deserves to be tier 2. Now I understand the argument could be made for this to be tier 1, but when I put the actual decks that I'm going to put up in tier 1 there, you'll understand why our Armed Dragon is like a little below those. Alright, speaking of which, that's a good transition. Next I have Banisher of the Radiance as the symbol here for the next deck, and that deck is actually called Banisher Down Squared. Now this name comes from Beatdown Squared, which I want to shout out Nightblader for the original idea for the deck, Beatdown Squared, which essentially uses the Kaiba skill Beatdown as well as monsters that are level 5 or higher that are easy to summon, such as Cyberdarks and Charging Gaia the Fierce Knight. All we did was make a twist to it, and again, this is only due to Nightblader to add Banisher of the Radiance, because Banisher of the Radiance is so anti-meta in this format because so many decks actually rely on the graveyard. We just talked about Ojama Armed Dragon as a deck. That card uses Ojama Match, which if you read the text says you have to send an Ojama monster, or Ojama card, sorry, that you control or in your hand to the graveyard as cost in order to activate that card. So Banisher completely shuts that down. It also shuts down a lot of other strategies that are prevalent in the format. We will discuss those as we go through the list here. So for those reasons, as well as its ability to also be aggressive, as well as shut down the opponent's strategy, and then the flex slots you have to play cards like Book of Moon, Battle Traps, Widespread Ruin, Wall of Disruption, whatever you may want. The flexibility of the deck plus the anti-meta-ness of it, I think actually puts it, and this is definitely not biased because this deck was worked on by almost every member of JDG, but this is a tier 1 deck to me. Alright, and I have results to back this up. I have results to back up all these, basically, because, as was the host of both Win-A-Box that took place for this format, as well as all the local tournaments that I held in Speed Duel League. I have based all of this mostly on results and data, and I will tell you that this deck, Banisher Down, did actually get not 1 but 2 top 4 finishes and only had 2 entries in the Win-A-Box tournament, the big Swiss tournament that was held for this format. So, I mean, if that's not evidence, nothing is, and it's not just that it's done at top 4, it's just that the 2 top 4 members who are using this deck, the 2 players, sorry, they're both members of Team JDG, so, but Justice is actually going to do a deck profile of this deck if you're curious exactly what the deck looks like. So I'm excited for you guys to be able to see that. However, he does have to finish playing first, and that's what I'm saying right now, is that he's in top 4 against another member of our team, Blaze, and they're going to play each other the next day after this is recorded, actually. And so it's guaranteed to be in second place at least, and it could actually even win the whole tournament. So yeah, that's a tier 1 deck to me, because I already had a feeling it would be really good, and then the results completely backed it up. And we tested, when we were testing the deck, it got backed up in those test results as well. And then, like I said, I'm going to talk about all the ways it counters almost all these decks. All right. Speaking of, we have Cyber Angels, which I think, despite the errata to the skill that was used in the deck the most, it still has a lot of potential. So what I'm actually going to do with Cyber Angels, and thank you for proving this to me, Ursus, by actually playing this very recently in what was actually a midterms, like, legal Banlist locals. However, Ursus did win with Cyber Angels, and I don't believe Ursus used any midterm cards. So that tells me something, which is that people just didn't try Cyber Angels really with the Alexa skill after the Ritual Ceremony skill was nerfed. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw Cyber Angels right here at tier 3. And now, prove my Banisher point. You cannot protect your Cyber Angel monsters with the effect of your Ritual spell if Banisher is on the field when you Ritual summon them. Therefore, it makes them susceptible to things they would not normally be, such as widespread ruin. This can be huge in helping you actually counter Cyber Angels and easily out them once they're on the field. Alright. Next up, we have Cyberdarks. Now, Cyberdarks, if you remember, we had a deck profile on this channel, did win Toxic Legacy. That was held for this format, so that's pretty impressive. However, Cyberdark has kind of fallen off since then, so I don't think it is correct for me actually to put it in a tier 1 spot right now. In fact, I'm going to actually, because of the complete lack of representation, and it actually seems to have several bad matchups against either optimized versions of decks later on, or just the new decks that came about after it was dominating. So I'm going to actually put it in tier 2, above Cyber Angels. I mean, not tier 2, sorry, tier 3, misspoke. Above Cyber Angels, however, it is, in my opinion, a tier 3 deck at this time. At the time of the end of the format, if the format would have gone longer, it could have been better. Who knows? However, still happy to see Cyberdarks with a spot on any tier list ever, because that's kind of cool. Alright. Again, Banisher obviously counters Cyberdarks. Why? If their claw is attempt to send to the graveyard while Banisher's on the board, it gets banished, and then their whole strategy is kind of dead. Alright. Moving on, we have Rat Box. That's right, Rat Box is still around, even with the ban list, because let's face it, the list didn't really hit Rat Box all that hard. It had some results in the tournaments where it actually saw play, but for the most part, I think the community was just kind of sick and tired of playing the stalled style of Rat Box, but it's still a very strong deck when it actually was around, so I'm going to have no choice but to drop that in tier 2, right behind the Ojama armed, I can never say that, Dragon. Rat Box is what it is, and obviously Banisher counters it because your rat doesn't go to the graveyard, doesn't trigger. Zombina doesn't go to graveyard, so you can't recur your Zombina. All your Zombina targets don't go to graveyard, so they don't come back from Zombina's effect. It's not as much as it does to other decks, but it still hurts the deck a little bit. You know, Haunted Shrine, you can't use it again from your graveyard. There's things. Also, Banisher can just turn off Shrine, but not give you any targets. So there are ways in which it's really good. Alright, next up here we actually have, I want to give a shout out to one Ron Wiz Mike. Did not give up on Dragoon, kept playing Dragoon. We have Dragoon Slow actually slotting into tier 3 just behind Cyberdarks, because Dragoon Slow, when Ron did play it, did show some results. Now, because there was only one player on it, I can't justify making this any higher. However, I think with more time and with more representation, Dragoon Slow actually did have the potential to creep into tier 2, but it didn't happen. It's not here, and obviously Banisher Banisher counters it by removing your opponent's fusion materials from the graveyard, or they never go to the graveyard, they go directly to the banish pile, so that if you out that Dragoon one time, it has nothing to use to come back. Alright, moving on, we have Raging Cat. Raging Cat, I am going to say, despite the early success it had, it did kind of fall off quite a bit and didn't see much representation towards the end of the format. However, I still think the deck has a few good matchups in the format and can obviously come out of nowhere and steal a lot of games. However, I do think that this deck kind of hit its ceiling very early on, and as other decks begin to get optimized, they not only caught up to it, they kind of surpassed it. For that reason, I'm going to actually have to put this in tier 3, albeit ahead of Cyberdarks, so top of tier 3, if it would cooperate with me, thank you. But this is a tier 3 deck, and it's unfortunate, but it's not anything more than that. Alright, next up we have a deck that I think is really just like untested and untried, although people have been talking about this Relinquished Gaia thing, which I have to be honest, I don't know much about. I haven't seen the deck, I haven't seen it be played, so I'm like kind of walking blind into this, but I understand the concept, I understand the potential that something like that could have. And because, in my opinion, now again, disclaimer, I should probably say at the start of the video, but disclaimer, this video and this tier list is only one man's opinion. Alright? So, there's no right or wrong here. There's only my opinion and your opinion. And whether you disagree with me, it's fine. Alright. Relinquish is Rogue. Just because I have yet to see the results, but I understand the potential it can have. Alright? Moving on. Obviously, Relinquish is countered with Banisher because the loop is destroyed. Not destroyed. Essentially, it's banished, so you can't loop. Other than that, Spheric Rainbow also just cannot be used, and that's a big part of the deck. Alright, next up we have a Crystal Beast, and this is it. This is it. If Banisher will get out of the way there, thank you. Crystal Beast is the best deck of this format. And there's a chance it could even be the best deck of the next format as well. The trap cards in Crystal Beast are absolutely insane. The skill it uses is absolutely insane. It has easy ways to address all its weaknesses, which is you can main deck DD Warrior Lady or Book of Moon, or I personally really like Berserk Scales as a tech card to counter Jinzo. It's weak against things like Straight Flush or an opponent having a lot of back row hate like Night Beams and Dust Tornadoes and all that, and Cosmic Cyclones. For that, you just side into multiple Waking the Dragon and you have countered that piece of your weakness as well. Really good, really solid deck. Can be aggressive, right? Because you can just like summon your Pegasus, set your trap, use your trap to clear the field, summon another monster, and then go in for over 3,000 damage. Or you can play very controlling mid-range, one monster at a time, trade evenly with your opponent, but you constantly keep replenishing your resources because that's kind of what the deck does. You manipulate your draws because you're cheating into the future. And because of that, the deck really is, I think, the most versatile deck that can play multiple different play styles. It doesn't really care about stall because of the options it has to remove any stalled strategies that your opponent may be on. So overall, just a very solid, very good deck. And obviously, yes, Banisher does have somewhat of an answer to it in that it stops Conclave, which sends itself to the graveyard, I believe, for cost. I don't remember if Raigeki also sends to the graveyard, but if it does, it stops that too, so there you go. But I still think Crystal Beast is the better deck than Banisher, because obviously Banisher, to counter Crystal Beast, relies on actually seeing Banisher, whereas Crystal Beast can just have a very versatile hand of, like, you know, almost any combination of traps and monsters, and it can really have the upper hand against any of these other decks, really. Alright. So next we're going to talk about my least favorite deck on this list. We're going to talk about Volcanic. And I don't like this. I don't. But Volcanic gets to the top of tier 2. And that's because of how good it's been lately. Alright, Volcanic, is it's stally, it's slow, it's annoying, it uses Twisted Personality, it uses Golden Ladybug, it uses Nightmare Wheels, it uses Blaze Accelerator and Volcanic Shells in which to recycle those Volcanic Shells. Sometimes it uses Jar of Avarice, sometimes it uses Royal Firestorm Guard. This is an absolutely disgusting deck, which is an absolutely torture of an experience to play against, even more so than Rat Box. But this is what we have, and this is frankly the top of tier 2, only because it hasn't really gotten any first place finishes, but it consistently tops everywhere it enters. And that to me is good enough to be the top of tier 2. Banisher obviously counters this because Blaze Accelerator requires you to send those shells to graveyard from your hand. So it basically kills Blaze Accelerator, which kills their way of removing monsters. So there's that reason why Banisher does counter this and why it's slightly above it. Also, I witnessed many a match, thanks to Justice and the replays of Justice playing Banisher down against this deck. I've witnessed many a match where Banisher down absolutely obliterated this deck. Just kidding. There were close matches, but Banisher down did manage to win as an anti-meta deck should against a clear meta deck, which is Volcanics. Alright, the final deck is actually XYZ. Now this is post-errata. Alright? Pre-errata, I would have probably put this right here. Or somewhere in there. But post-errata, I unfortunately do not have a choice but to put this at the bottom of tier 3. That is because to summon your boss monster, which is still very powerful, to summon your boss monster, XYZ Dragon Cannon, you have to put one card now from your hand to the bottom of your deck. And the issue with that is that you have less discard fodder. Alright? So while this deck is still really good against slow stall decks, absolutely. 1, Banisher counters it. 2, Conclave hard counters it. And finally, you just have less discard fodder now, even when you do summon your big boss monster. It just doesn't do as much as it used to. And you can see how that would reduce the effectiveness of the deck as a whole. So I hate it, but it did show results, thanks to Stevie, really, when it did enter a tournament. So I'm not going to put it in Rogue, because it does have a few results. I'm going to put it in Tier 3. And I know Tier 3 is a bit of a jumbled mess, but it just goes to show you how many different decks were able to show results in this format. And how much of a healthy format it is compared to what we used to have. Which, if you go look at the prior tier list video I did with Cursive, there were only like 4 decks in there, right? Really, like relevant ones. So this is actually kind of exciting, and I really hope we get more of this in Midterm Box, where give me most of these decks. Obviously, some can get power crept out, that's okay, but give me most of these decks, and then some new decks. That's all I want out of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Alright, well, let me know what you guys think. Obviously, I know there's going to be a lot of disagreement on this, but remember, I gave the disclaimer that A, it was an unsolved format, and B, this is only my opinion, and mine only. I did not discuss this with anyone. This is just what I think. But those are my thoughts on the tier list. Let me know yours in the comments below. Would you have placed any of these decks in a different place? Did I miss a deck? Is there a deck that just shouldn't be here at all? And what are you thinking, you clown? But yeah, let me know all that. But until the next video, where me and Justice are going to be back together to do some midterm testing once again for you, like we did last week. So look forward to that. But until then, Atera Master, out.